Welcome back to the Beyond the Buckets. I'm happy to have my friend, Shea Coleman. Welcome to the program.
Thanks for having me, Chris. I'm looking forward to this talk.
So you are the owner of TopDown Performance, and we're going to get into all that. But give me a 3-minute backstory on you, if you can do it in 3 minutes.
All right, I'll try my best. So growing up, just basically sports is my whole life. The beauty of sports is that you can relate it to any life experience. And so I've always wanted to be and stay in sports, even though my physical skills might have not stayed the same as they once were.
Sure. Just
so
like us all.
Right. Going through high school, didn't know what I really wanted to do. Kind of skated through life, I guess I would say. And then went to college and still didn't know what I wanted to do. I was more worried about everyone else or what everyone else thought I should be doing. More worried about everything but what I could control. And we'll kind of get into that later.
Right.
But I fell in love with psychology class. I had a general psychology class, fell in love with that. And that led me to major in psychology at Chico State.
Yep.
And then I ended up going for my master's at John F. Kennedy University for sports psychology. So my two passions, sports and psychology, I just meshed those together. And luckily they had a program for that. And it's really changed me. I graduated 5 years ago from that program, and my whole mindset and outlook and inward look on every little detail in life has been changed. And that's what I'm trying to instill in all these athletes at a younger age in high school, before they go on to college and in the real world.
For sure. I can definitely identify with a lot of stuff that you just mentioned. My undergrad was in psychology. I don't know if you knew that, but that was definitely something that I wanted to do, go down the sports psychology kind of realm. And I found myself more in the coaching realm, but super excited to jump into a bunch of different topics. For people that may not know, you are basically or are sports psychologist for last basketball season for Valley Christian girls basketball, and you were with our team for the entire season and put us through different programs and different exercises to stretch our mental capacity to hopefully perform better. So tell everybody just a little bit about your experience with our team and how you helped us so much on and off the court.
Yeah, for sure. I've worked with quite a few teams. The girls team was probably one of my favorite teams to work with because there was a lot of receptive athletes on that team. And the best part was the higher end athletes bought in the most. And that's a big goal for coaching and as well working with teams is if you can get the higher end athletes to buy in, then the rest of the team tends to follow. And that's what happened. And it was a great dynamic. I would say starting out the season, just like most kids, like getting frustrated at other things that they have no control over, right? Maybe it'd be missed shots. Maybe they have an off day. Maybe something happened at school that sucked and that's all they can think about. They can't take themselves out of that situation. And so really working with the girls and getting to realize to be present in the present moment is the only time you can change something, right? So we can reflect on the past to fix our past mistakes and look forward to the future to prepare. But the only time you can change something is right now. And so I think the girls really embraced that present moment mentality and that next play mentality, like not thinking and dwelling back about the last bad pass or the last bad play, and just getting on and moving on from that. But also working with them, the more drills we do, just with every team too, is the camaraderie starts to build. They start to learn more about each other. They start to learn more about how they think and how they act. And when you start to realize how you're acting and how you're behaving, you start to realize how it affects other people. And it's just a real cool dynamic to work with the individuals, but also as well as the team.
It's very interesting because we as coaches, we spend so much time on the floor and trying to figure out the dynamics that are going to help our team win. But a lot of us as coaches, and, I've tried to do some of this stuff on my own, but it's just really difficult because you have to get a press break. You've got to get a press. You've got to get this man offense, zone defense, and so many things that you are worried about. on the court, sometimes you say, okay, well, this can go by the wayside, but I'm a big proponent of this sort of thing, the team dynamics, some of the team activities that we would do. You know, we would have, I mean, you would bring a piece of candy and spoons and tell them to transfer this over, and if it falls, you got to go back, and then, you know, different little things that they could do. Tell us about some of the activities that you would have the group do, come together as a team, and before they knew it, they were enjoying themselves, they were having fun, and the most important part is they were coming together because of that experience.
Yeah. So the beauty of sports and the beauty of these little games, right, is it allows you to dissect that aspect of the game or sport and apply it to a bigger scenario. So it's very relatable. So the game you were talking about is called Lighthouse, and basically certain girls would be stationed throughout the sea, right, with obstacles in the way, and the ship with the spoon carrying the candy was blindfolded, and they had to be navigated by their teammates who were the lighthouses. And afterwards we would dissect, like, okay, so what worked for you, what didn't work for you? And some girls would be like, well, she told me left and I turned left and she said no. And other girls would be like, oh, I just stepped left. And so it's getting to realize not only how people receive the info differently, but also how you perceive it and how you say it as well. Are you very descriptive with how you describe things, or are you very vague? And not asking you to change, but the biggest proponent of all of our games and the underlying thing of what I do with athletes and teams is building self-awareness. When you know more about where you're at, then you can realize where you want to go. So think if you're going on a hike, right? When you go hiking, before you figure out where you want to go or how to get there, you have to realize where you're starting at.
Sure.
Because if you don't know where you're starting at, then you have no idea the path you need to take. And so the biggest part is self-awareness. And once we get that increase of self-awareness, and the fun part about it for me is it's a lifelong process.
Right.
And so the more we get into those games, the more we build that self-awareness, they start to realize more of how they are an integral part of the team. And then that's how the team starts to come together with everyone on board of trying to increase their self-awareness. And then they're not so busy worried about what that teammate did or that teammate did. They're worried more about what they are doing, what they are contributing, what they can control.
Right, no doubt. And the self-awareness is funny because we had a Zoom this morning, and you know we're in classes now, but we had a Zoom this morning as a team, and that was my topic, self-awareness, because I don't think whether it be a team dynamic or just individuals, you know, out there listening to this, self-awareness is one of the most important things that you can have in life, because if you're not you know, if you're not self-aware of who you are and what you're trying to accomplish, and you know the energy that you put out, like you were just talking, and I remember a couple of times where and you're not a basketball guy, so this was perfect. You know, I would explain something and feel like I did a great job explaining it, but then the girls, you know, don't really know, but they're not going to speak up about it either. And some of the things that I've learned from you, just getting an outside perspective, maybe you could have said it this way so they can react to it in the way that you want. Whereas you may call a ball screen coverage and they've never heard of that, and they're not able to execute on the court. And I just think that's so paramount to anybody in life, is just the communicating factor, and self-awareness that you have is going to be very, very important to just the relationships that you have on the court, and even in life, is what we always like to bring it back to.
Oh yeah, for sure. Communication is one of the other biggest things, I think, is because we think we're explaining it correctly because to us it makes sense, right? To us it makes perfect sense the way we're explaining it. However, we're not really trying to realize what picture they're seeing. And so it's just constant going back and forth of, okay, I'm painting this picture for you. What do you see this picture as? And then they describe that back to you and you're like, that's not really what I meant. Okay, where did we go wrong? And it's a constant assessment. I mean, look at any relationship, any friendship. It's just constant communication and self-awareness of how you're saying it, but then that awareness goes farther once we get better at it in terms of, okay, how does it affecting those around me, and how are they being aware of what I'm saying? So that self-awareness then turns into kind of that overall awareness.
For sure. Let's talk a little bit about cognitive behavioral therapy. I know you use that with our athletes quite often, and whether you're an athlete or not, you can definitely take some of the advice that you're going to give us right now. So let's talk about that. Let's take a deep dive.
Yeah. So cognitive behavioral theory is basically your thoughts and emotions and behaviors are all intertwined. They all interact with each other. One of them affects the other two, and so forth and so forth. And so we can try to use our emotions to dictate the other two, and we can try to fake it till you make it. And that works in some scenarios, but it really comes down to is the thoughts. And your thoughts, if you can get a handle on those, if you can start changing those and controlling those, you're much more likely to have control over your emotions and behaviors.
Right.
For example, a lot of people have an emotion and they get flustered, let's say in a game, and they're just in a panic. A lot of times they don't even know what that emotion is, especially in high school, right? They haven't dissected those emotions yet, and they label it as something else. And so diving more into it, thinking more about what that might be through whether it be breathing exercises like meditation or something like that, or just doing some imagery and imagining themselves in that situation. What does it feel like? Try and describe it in different emotions. And the more we can break down that, the more we can have control over it. And so a lot of what CBT is getting control over those three things: your thoughts, emotions, and behaviors. So I call them control the controllables. So what I did with the girls, and I do with every athlete and every team I work with, is you draw a circle on a piece of paper, and then you draw a bigger circle around that. And in that little circle, write all the things that you can control, that you have 100% control over. And on the outside, the things that you don't. And basically what they come to the realization is that in the inner circle, you only have control over your thoughts, emotions, and behaviors. Everything else you can have a little bit of influence over, like your friendships and maybe your parents, right? Or some things you have no control over, like the referees or the weather, and stuff like that. And so basically, the more time we spend focusing on the things we can't control, the less we're gonna change, the less we're going to be able to find a direction and go forth with it, and the more likely we're going to be distracted, and our performance is going to take the hit. Whereas if we can focus on the things that we can control, then we can direct that. Okay, now these are the things I can control. All right, where am I at with those? What are my current thoughts? What are my current emotions and behaviors?
Right.
And once we build that self-awareness of what those are currently, okay, that's not what I want, or that's somewhat of what I want, or I'm dead on with it, whatever it may be. That is the key component, is basically figuring out where you're at due to those three areas.
Sure. I had another mental performance coach on a while back, and I think she was explaining thoughts, feelings, and then actions. So I think it's very similar to what you're saying, is your thoughts are going to control your feelings, and how you feel is going to control how you act. And it kind of works in that circular motion. So if you've controlled your thoughts in the beginning, well, your feelings towards whatever the situation, if it is stressful or not stressful, really doesn't matter to you. So you can now perform in the current space that you're in, and you're not worried about those two other things that, one, we have control of, and then the second, I guess you can control your feelings based on your thoughts, but then now you have better control of your actions.
Yeah, she might have been, I have to check that episode, but she might have been explaining like a one-way street,
Okay.
maybe a circular one, but I'm explaining it to where you have those three categories, and they have, basically they affect each other. So the arrows are pointing both ways at each point. And so a certain behavior will affect your emotions and thoughts. A certain emotion will affect your thoughts and your behaviors. Certain thoughts will affect. And so what it is they're all affecting each other. So if we don't have control over any one of those, they're just going to run amok.
Yeah.
So what we're trying to do is really hone in on the thoughts. And once we can hone in on the thoughts, then we can start attacking those other things of, okay, how do I want to behave? How do I want to change that? How do I want to change my emotions? And so that's why I call it top-down performance, is because it starts at the top and then it works its way down. And so basically, if you can rewire the way you think, then you can rewire the way you interpret emotions and rewire the way that you behave explicitly.
Right. Talk about breathing and breathing exercises to center your thoughts. I've gotten into meditation and just calming your mind. I've even told our students that we're in front of the screen for hours upon hours, whether you're in front of your phone or you're in front of your computer. You're constantly stimulated by the external things, and you need to calm your mind because your mind is always going to be spinning and racing. So I've really told them to really calm their mind and sit with their thoughts for 3 minutes and things like that and breathe. So tell me about breathing and calming your mind.
Yeah, I wouldn't say I'm an expert on it. And my personal belief is that there's people and societies in the Eastern culture that know way more about it and been doing it for thousands of years. So that's one of my goals, is to go over there and learn from them a little bit more about breathing. But I think it's whatever type of breathing works best for you. What are you trying to get out of it? I think you can energize yourself from breathing, and I think you can calm yourself from breathing. Basically what it all comes down to for me is that your brain, even though it's only about 3 pounds, 2 to 3 pounds, it uses 20 to 30% of your oxygen intake. And so the fact that you're trying to perform, like we all take care of our body, we all get, we need to breathe and get oxygen to our muscles, but your brain is a muscle, and it's your hardest working muscle, and it's your best muscle, because without it, you can't operate your body. And so a lot of the times we struggle, especially with sitting in front of the screens, or just constantly, especially these high schoolers and college students just going to class day in, day out. We just automatically breathe. Everyone does it. No one really thinks about their breathing all the time, every second of the day. Like during this conversation, I didn't think about it till you brought it up.
Yeah.
Right. So now I'm consciously taking some deeper breaths. But if I'm breathing shallow, which is automatically, right, then I'm getting a small percentage of what I could be getting. And that small percentage, 20, 30% of that's going to the brain. If I'm giving it more with each breath, right, the better it's going to be able to pump nutrients and blood and be able to perform and create more electrical impulses. And so the more we breathe deeply, the more we're providing our brain and our body with the optimal blood circulation and nutrients for them to perform as best as possible.
I love it. Everybody take 10 deep breaths while you're listening to this. Let's talk about dendrites and axons, or axons and dendrites. I read this book called The Talent Code, and basically it says, how you get really good at something is, building myelin in your brain. I believe is very similar to the axons and dendrites that you speak of.
Yeah, so you have your axon is basically what the myelin sheath wraps around. And the thicker that myelin, it acts kind of like rubber around copper wire. It allows it to, the message, the electrical impulse, to be travel down there faster.
Got it. So it fires quicker. So people that are elite at something, that fires faster.
Yeah, and it's basically, if you have that firing faster throughout the circuitry of what you want to do, that's kind of where the term muscle memory comes in. Like it just happens so automatic, you don't even have to think about it because you've primed it so much, and we'll get to that in a sec. But that basically is the term where muscle memory is from. Like that's what they're talking about when they talk about muscle memory. It's because you've done it so many times that it's built up that myelin sheath, and it's built up a bigger basically road, and I'll explain that in a sec, of faster travel for that information. And so it travels down the axon as an electrical impulse, and then the dendrites, it changes into a chemical, and then that chemical then latches onto the next axon, right? And then that changes into electrical impulse. And so it's going from electrical impulse to chemical to chemical, and that whole transfer is basically how our brain works. in terms of how we think, behave, and act, or feel, I should say.
Gotcha.
So to explain it, my favorite analogy to explain that would be through highways, roads, footpaths, and jungles, and I'll explain that. So when you have done something for a very long time, let's say for you, coach basketball, you've basically created a highway in your brain of coaching information, things that you want to do as a coach, ways you want to behave and interact with athletes. You've done it for so long, you've created this giant highway where the information, it just happens. You could probably coach a practice right now without any prep, right? And just boom, hit it.
Definitely.
Not saying that you don't, I've seen you prep, but I'm just saying you could. And things that we don't use as much, things that we rarely use, right? They're more like a dirt path that you're going to go on a hike on, right? It's a lot slower. It's still a path. You still get there, but it's much slower. And things that we've never done before, like trying to learn a new skill, that's basically like a jungle. And so you're trying to hack your way through, and it's the slowest. You're making progress, but it's really tough because you've never made that. Your brain hasn't created that connection yet. And so it's basically trying to navigate through that. And so what I was talking about with the girls, and I talk about with all the athletes and teams I use, is basically the self-awareness component. Is we have to find out what we want to do, and what we want to do we do it well, or do we not do it at all? And if we do it well, we've created a highway, we want to keep that. And if we're doing something that we don't want to do, and it's a highway, we do it all the time, let's say, I don't know, be on our phone 24/7, right? Typical high school athlete right now. So
Definitely.
if we want to break that habit, we have to figure, it's going to be hard because it's become a highway. It's become easily accessible. It's automatic for us. And so we got to find another way to go instead of that, right? And it's going to be tough because we're going to be cutting through a jungle, right? But the more we use it less and less, it's going to turn into a jungle. So that highway is going to slowly deteriorate, almost like if you think about planting, like it's pruning back, because your brain only has so much space. And so if you're not using something, it'll prune it back. And if you are using something, it'll try and create that new connection over there. And so basically what you're doing is you're literally rewiring your brain and these pathways in your brain.
If you don't use it, you lose it, right?
Pretty much, yeah.
And I could say that same thing for coaching. Like as you evolve and you grow, there's things that you did when you first started that you no longer do. And, you know, that just kind of goes for any walk of life. Tell me about neutral thinking.
Neutral thinking is, I just came across it this last year in terms of the term neutral thinking. And it's from Trevor Moab. He wrote a book with Russell Wilson called It Takes What It Takes.
Oh,
and
I gotta check that one out.
Yeah, it's a quick read. It's right to the point. And basically what he's saying in the terms of neutral thinking is that whenever a situation arises, just look at the facts. Okay, so basketball, let's say it's fourth quarter, a minute left, down by 10. Okay, we can get into the bad calls. We could get into who's tired. We can get into who's not feeling it, whatever. You can go any direction you want. You can follow emotion. But what he's saying is just look at the facts. All right, we're down by 10 with a minute left. Okay, what do we need to do in order to shorten that gap, right? And is that possible? Right. And so what it comes down to is just basically, you're not trying to just find the positive situation like, oh, well, we made it this far. This is good. Like hopefully we can win, or just being positive, like, yeah, we're going to win no matter what, which is fine. I'm all for that. And I'll get to that when we get to the other side of the coin. But neutral thing is just looking at the facts and being like water. I don't know if you know Bruce Lee's little clip of be like water. If you think about water, it's the most adaptable element, right? It can be a solid, a gas, or a liquid. And if you think about water, over time, it's created canyons, right? Craters. It's cut through metal over time, and just it always finds a way through persistence to succeed. And so anytime you see water streaming down a path and it comes across an obstacle, it doesn't sit there and dwell on it. It just immediately, oh, this is the best way. Okay. And so that's kind of like neutral thinking. Like when you come across an obstacle, be like water in terms of like, okay, what are the facts? What do I need to do to attack this the best with what I have? That's it. Plain and simple. You're not getting stuck in what has happened or anything like that. You're just in the present moment and what's available to me? How can I use this to my benefit and go?
That speaks well to me. I love just focusing on the facts, and I love the saying, you are who you are, and you are who you are in that moment. And, being present to your earlier points is the most important thing. And so you can't really worry about what happened previously. You talked about the next play, which we always talk about, stuff like that. But what does the other side of the coin mean as far as the neutral thinking?
The other side of the coin, I would say, is not neutral thinking per se. The other side of the coin is more of like positive psychology, but I think it's more of I look at it as more of like an advantageous way. So a situation comes up like COVID-19, right? This sucks. I don't get to do what I used to do. I don't get to work with teams like I was planning on, all this stuff. But what does it allow me to do? Okay, it allows me a lot more free time. Okay, it allows me more free time to work on my business. It allows me more free time to read and gain more knowledge on stuff that I'm more interested in. And so no matter what situation's thrown at you, there's always something you can gain out of it. And that to me is the other side of the coin. And it's a perspective thing. You think about growing up as a kid, you see a penny on the ground. If it's heads, you pick it up and the rest of your day is good, right? You see that same penny, it's tails, and you're like, oh, don't pick that up, right? And so to me, it's the same coin, right? It's the same scenario every time. You can't change the scenario. You can only change your thoughts behind it. And so every time I see a situation, I always try to look at both sides of the coin, because naturally we want to look at the side of the coin where we're going to complain. Like, oh man, like, look at this smoke around here. I can't go for runs. I can't work out hard. I can't breathe barely. It's smoke in my eyes, right? The other side of the coin is, okay, now I can get more creative with my workouts. Maybe it turned to more strength training. Maybe this allows me to be indoors for something. Maybe it's time for me to take some time off of working out and maybe stretch some more, right? And stuff like that. And so it goes in line with growth mindset. Like no obstacle is too challenging. Like anytime I see it, it's just another way to be more creative to overcome that. And so my favorite thing is that the bad things that happen are really just blessings in disguise, because I've met people who've faced crazy adversity in their life, and those are usually the strongest people I've ever met. And so I know it sucks at the time going through these hardships, but all it is just making you stronger and fortifying you, your mental fortitude, basically.
Wow, you're speaking my language for sure. I like to look at the positive things in every scenario, even if it does suck. And so many scenarios do suck, but life is going to continue to go on, and you have to find a way to dig yourself out of that hole. And if you are dwelling on what already happened, you're going to be in a situation where you're not going to be successful long term. You have to continue to look past it. Same thing, like when COVID hit. All right, what's the next pivot? I wouldn't have started this podcast until June had COVID not hit in March. All right, I got to figure it out. I have so much more time on my hands. I got a newborn baby, and I get to hang out with my wife and my baby while this is going on. You have to look at the positive side of things. And if you look back on things, you're worrying about what it should have, could have. It's just a bad way to live your life, and you got to live the other side of the coin. Like you mentioned, this is a good term, and I'm definitely going to steal that.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, every second spent thinking about how shitty your situation is a second wasted. And so the more we can get quickly flipping that coin over and getting right back and staying focused, that's when we're going to be the most productive. That's when our performance isn't going to falter. It's going to increase. And that's what it's all about.
One of the best things that I heard this year, as far as coaching goes, it's and it really goes for any walk of life, is actually two things. One, from one of the previous guests. What type of mood do you choose to be in today? You know, we all walk in a door, and it's the energy that we put off. Are we going to be in a good mood regardless of what happened outside of that door? And the second thing is, who can I serve when I walk in that space? So when I see this door, I can control my energy output towards everybody else. And secondly, who can I serve in the grand scheme of things when I walk in this door? When you open a door for somebody, it's an act of service. And so every time I'm walking indoors now, I'm conscientious of those two things. And these two people, you know, had this mindset, and it's rubbed off on me. And now everywhere I go, what type of mood am I in? Because I can control that. And secondly, when I open this door, who can I serve? Anywhere I go moving forward.
Yeah, I love that. I like that mindset. And that's that intention. We'll get to that a little bit when we get to visualization, but planning ahead like that is key. But also sometimes you have a plan and things go south, and people let that disruption of the plan ruin the rest of their day. I'm sure you've heard the adage of, like, let's say you had I don't know, $10,000 and somebody took $3. Is that going to affect you the rest of the day? Well, if we have 10,000 seconds and someone ruins 3 seconds of it, some people let 3 seconds of someone's words or something that they did or didn't do affect them for the rest of the day, sometimes weeks, right? And so they forget their plan, that they're supposed to be setting that intention.
And we let a lot of people make us feel, because of their energy or whatever they put out there, that makes us feel a certain type of way about it. And we can't really control what other people are doing. We can't control what they say. We can't control, their actions. But at the end of the day, we can control our response to it. And we should not be affected by what others are putting out there. If your teammate has bad energy or your friend has bad energy, that's on them. You can't allow that to seep into your world.
Yeah. Full circle back to control the controllables. Control
Right.
what you can.
The pleasure pathway in the brain, dopamine receptors, and then serotonin. How do these two things play out against one another during whether it be in life or athletic competition?
So I'm not expert in neuroscience yet. That's the next step for me. But dopamine is just all over. It's the reward system, right? We could just go to social media, the like button, or just an immediate reward for doing something correctly. You get an immediate praise from a coach or a friend, or your grade, right? If you do well on a test and you get that reward. But it's just running rampant right now because we're in this society where we can kind of get whatever we want. 2 days time, I can have whatever I want on my doorstep from Amazon, right? Dopamine's flooding the system. And what happens is the more dopamine that's getting released in the brain, the more those receptors are getting filled up. So it's not just like a vacuum where it shoots out and it sucks it up and it's ready for the next set. It's kind of like a lock and a key. So dopamine goes out as the key and it sits in that lock for it to be transmitted. But if there's a flood of them, basically all those other ones behind it aren't going to be able to sit in that lock. And so that's what happens when people are always constantly seeking the next best thing, is because our receptors are full and our brain's pumping out all this other dopamine and hoping it'll feel happier, but it can't because those receptors are full. And then the more we use them, the more it's like a lesser and lesser effect. It's like the first time you had ice cream was the best. And then every time after that, it's like, it's good. And then probably now you're just like, this is good, but I can't really afford these calories, right? So the more we, dopamine's a good thing and rewards are great, but we're doing it at such an excess, especially in high school and college, and people who just don't realize the trap that social media is setting for them.
Right.
It's flooding it and it's requiring them to now produce more to get the same or lesser result. It's basically like a drug.
For sure. Yeah, it really is. I think that's another I don't think it's a pandemic, but definitely an epidemic. The social media, high school, college, instant gratification world that we live in. And because somebody likes something, and then here's the thing, we can have, you can have 2,000 likes and one person says something bad. You post the best photo, you have the, the best angle and all of that, right? And all of a sudden you get 100, oh my gosh, you look great. And then the one person says you look horrible, like, and your whole world is ruined. But it's like just like what you said before, about the other side of the coin. And one person out of 1,000 people or 2,000 people had this feeling towards you, but that shouldn't change your mind about who you are and what you stand for just because of that. Um, and what's been working for me, and we tried to do this with the girls, this year, is decrease their social media time and basically reset. And we look at their screen time, or they show us their screen time, and it's amazing how much time they actually spend on their phones. My screen time right now, last year I was averaging about 2 hours per day, which is a lot of time in my opinion, but it's text messages, emails, all of that, very little social media. It is on there, but now it's like 3 hours, 3 hours a day. I average that. So that's a significant more amount of time, but I have more time on my hands as far as not doing anything or leisure. And I just think that resetting is very important. So talk to me about the reset button.
Yeah, the reset button is basically that next play mentality. The reset button is something that you have engineered in your head over time of, okay, well, hopefully you have, but that's the goal, is when something bad happens, how do you get that thought out of your head quickly so you can get back in the present moment? Because
Yep.
usually when a bad thing happens, we get stuck there. Like you were just talking about the one social media post, that person gets stuck there and they're stuck in that moment back there instead of what they're doing right now in the current moment. They don't even know. They're still stuck back there. They probably don't realize their body language is bad. Their feelings are affecting them right now, and their thoughts. Everything's negative spiraling because of what that past moment brought.
Right.
So the past is great to look back and learn from and tweak. But if we're dwelling back there, it's usually because it's an area of pain or discomfort.
Yep.
And so we got to learn to just brush that aside because it doesn't matter. It's over. And the only moment you can change is the present moment. And so that reset button, whether it be a cue or a trigger. So like sometimes I'll have athletes like wear a bracelet, or if it's basketball, I told the girls like either wear a different color shoelace or a different, like paint a nail a different color or whatever it may be, some kind of thing that they can see visually, or like a mental cue that we've talked about when we work one-on-one, like, hey, when this happens, what are you going to tell yourself? Like, how are you going to snap back to the present moment? Because all it's going to do is decline your performance to be stuck in the past. So we work with that, and that's our reset button. And the fun part for me about it is every athlete has a different reset button. Every athlete has a different cue or trigger to change that.
Any goal that I've had in life, I've always kind of thought it out before I achieved it. And I know you're big on visualizing things and imagery, thinking about it before the action takes place. If I'm giving a talk, I've envisioned myself on the stage, or, uh, I've done it over and over in my mind, even if I haven't actually performed it in that space that I'm going to be in. Talk about visualizing and imagery.
Yeah. So I call it imagery because I'm trying to imagine something using all five senses, because the more senses you can use, the more you're going to be able to replay that exact moment. A lot of people call it visualization because a lot of people are just seeing it, which is fine. But if you can like feel how your heart's going to pump, whether you're going to take a speech or not, and how you're going to calm that, maybe your palms are sweaty, like the more you can think about the real feel, the more you'll create that muscle memory that we talked about earlier. So the beautiful thing about imagery is when you're thinking of being in that certain scenario and going through it, you're actually doing the work. That those axons and dendrites are actually still creating that pathway to that muscle group, whatever it may be, your mouth if you're going to do a speech, or your hands if you're going to be dribbling, or whatever it may be. Those pathways are still making the mind muscle connection. It's just on a very small scale. So you can actually practice. A lot of these athletes listening to this right now, you could be practicing your sport just by visualizing it. There's been a lot of studies shown that athletes who haven't played their sport in a few months but just did imagery actually got better because they were constantly being able to make that connection. And I think, and a lot of the researchers show, that combining both the actual practice and the imagery outside of practice is huge. You're like basically able to practice all day, every day, while you're only hitting the gym for 2 hours a day. And so a lot of high school and college athletes aren't doing this. And so if you want to elevate your game and far surpass those around you, start implementing both. And it's also a good way to manage your thoughts. It's really good practice on managing your thoughts and your behaviors and your feelings, because you kind of see like, okay, I'm going to go into this podcast talk with you. Okay, I'm feeling nervous. All right, why am I feeling nervous? Oh, because I'm excited. All right, so let's go into that. Now I'm walking into the podcast. I'm excited. Okay, what is that excitement going to do? What do I want to say? How do I want to portray myself? And so just being able to walk through that scenario more and more often. Right. I've basically already done this podcast with you 4 times before we actually did it, because I was just replaying it in my head over and over in different questions that you may or may not ask and what I may or may not say.
It takes what it takes, right?
Exactly.
What's your perspective on goals, and if if athletes or people in general should have them?
Oh, for sure. Basically, a goal is going back to that hiking analogy I gave in the beginning. If you don't have a goal, you're kind of just hiking to hike. You have no destination to reach. And so you could be taking the longest route possible, maybe even backtracking, because you have no direction where you want to go. And so that goal now gives you a destination, which allows you to see what's the fastest way to get there. I know where I'm at due to self-awareness. I know where I want to go because of the goal. All right, now what's my plan of attack? If I have no idea where I'm going, I can't pick the fastest route, right? And so when we pick that fastest route and reach that goal, boom, now we can move on to the next one. The problem is a lot of people don't make goals, and so they're feeling all this anxiety, like, I just don't know what to do. Well, pick something and go do it, right? A lot of people don't write goals down. It's an idea in their head, and we have anywhere from 40,000 to 60,000 thoughts a day. So that thing's just going to come and go like nothing, right? And so if we write it down and put it somewhere where we're going to see it a lot, I have a bunch of Post-it notes on my bathroom mirror, so when I'm brushing my teeth, I see all my goals for the day, right? What that may be. Or on my phone, when I open it up, it's on the background screen. What's my goal right then and there? The more places you can put it, the more you see it, the more it'll become a reoccurring thought. So then it'll be like 10,000 out of my 60,000 thoughts. So it's much more likely to get done if it's constantly on the forefront of my mind. And then a lot of things is people set goals they know they can accomplish. Like, let's say I want to be a faster runner. First of all, that's no direct thing where you want to go. You want to say like, okay, I want to run a specific time. That's easy, right? Because we have the stopwatch, we can measure it. But the thing is, they set a goal they know they're already going to achieve. They just know it's going to take hard work. I recommend, and there's research showing, it says 4% right now, but I truly believe there's a lot of other research out there saying, don't get stuck in the norms. I don't know if you know about Roger Bannister, the dude who broke the 4-minute mile a couple decades ago. No one broke it before him. He breaks it. The next year, a bunch of other people break it because now they think it's possible. So I'm going to say a couple things about that is you have a governor on your brain. We have like on a car, like your car says 160, but it really only goes to like 120, right? Because it has a governor on there. Our brain has that too. And we put it on there because we don't want to fail. We don't want to set a goal too high because we don't want to fail.
Right.
But if you look at the people who you idolize, they set goals that seemed unrealistic, which made them push harder than ever thought was possible, which made them get to maybe not where they want to be yet, but much farther than if they had set a regular goal. And so one of my favorite quotes is by Henry Ford is, if you think you can, or you think you can't, you're right. Yeah. And so you're basically, if you think you can do something and you say you can do it and you set that lofty goal, you basically are speaking that possibility into existence. Whereas if you're like, I can't do that, you've already snuffed that out. It's not even a possibility. It doesn't even exist in your mindset. And so obviously it's not going to happen if your mind doesn't allow it to exist.
Right. And I think for people out there, athletes or individuals just trying to better themselves, goals are a great thing. And to your earlier point, you talked about being like water. You have to be able to adapt and change those goals based on the situation. So if that rock does come into your path, you have to find a way around that path. And a lot of times people put age range goals. By age 30, I'm going to be married and have 2 children. And, by 24, I'm going to have a master's degree and I'm going to travel the world. Well, sometimes life happens and you're not able to meet it at that time. But in the grand scheme of things, if you are 25 years old, we're living longer as human beings, right? So that means usually most of the time you're going to get into your 80s, 90s, or even, make it to 100. So if you're going to live till 100 years old and you're only 25, you still have so much time in order to accomplish some of those goals down the road. And just because they're lofty doesn't mean that you're not going to reach them. At 35, if I want to own a basketball team, that may not happen until I turn 65, right? Or 75. And that could be 30 years down the road, but it's still going to be a progression to get there. And it's going to be like the stock market goes up, 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 down, up, 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 down. And trying to get to those places, I think, is very important for people to understand. And I'm a big proponent of everything you've said. Where can everybody follow you and get more information on some of the stuff that we talked about today?
Yeah, if they want to just follow me on Instagram at TopDown_performance, or if they want to reach out to me and work with me, I'm actually offering a free one-on-one session during this pandemic. So however long it's lasting, I'm going to be offering this because that's how strongly I believe in this stuff. And so you can find me at SheaColeman.com. That's SheaColeman.com. And that's my website. Or if you just go to my Instagram, like I said, just message me, just DM me. It starts at the top and I'll know right then and there you want a free session, and we'll get to work and we'll start dissecting some things. Another thing about the goal setting is planning ahead with that visualization, right? And so implementing all these things, it's not just like one approach and another. They all intertwine and they all mesh same way your brain does with all the axons and dendrites. So yeah, I appreciate you taking the time.
Everybody, it takes what it takes. Whatever you need to do, it takes what it takes, and be able to flip that coin and look at the positive things. So really appreciate you, my friend, for coming on the show. And yeah, everybody go follow. We'll put it in the show notes.
Awesome. Thanks, Chris.
All right.
Thank you for listening to the Beyond the Buckets podcast. Please remember to subscribe, rate, and share the show with your friends. And until next time, take care.